The Iranians say that a deal with the US is not imminent, despite the United States government stating that a agreement could be reached as possibly as by the end of Monday. But it's almost 10 o'clock in Europe, 9 o'clock in the UK, 4 o'clock in the US, and there doesn't seem to be any progress or sign that a final peace agreement is being signed. And so this is going to be concerning for the markets. Oil has dipped quite a lot on the prospect of a peace deal, but could it re-rise at the prospect of this not being reached? Could we see the level of uncertainty returning and affecting everything from oil to the Strait of Hormuz and so on? Well, I'm delighted to be joined again by Anas, who is an expert on oil markets. And, well, we're streaming to Substack, we're streaming to YouTube, we're streaming to Twitter, Anas, so we've got a hell of a load of different perspectives, I'm sure, who will be having their own thoughts in the comments. But I want to hear your thoughts first and foremost. How do you feel about the prospect for peace? Are we nearly there, or is it unlikely?
We are at a situation now where we have to be extremely careful. Just on the news that's been circulating around in the last 2 days, when Asian markets opened on Monday morning, of course, it's a holiday in the United States, so the markets are closed. But in Asia and the rest of the world, it was open, and oil prices declined by about 6%, and Brent declined below 100. Gas prices in Europe, that natural gas prices in Europe, declined markedly as a result of the news. So people literally can't trade the news because it is very clear that that oil and gas prices, LNG prices, are extremely sensitive to the news. Whether they are correct or not, it doesn't matter. However, if we want to look at this, the way I look at it is probably different from others. I learned from OPEC meetings a very important lesson that impacted my life and impacted the way I look at markets. Historically speaking, when there are those OPEC or OPEC plus meetings that are extremely important to the market, and people are waiting whether OPEC is going to cut production or not, whether it's going to increase production or not, etc. Meetings sometimes lasted more than 1 day. And what happened is that you have a large number of journalists right there in the OPEC basement, and everyone is trying to fish for a piece of information. And you have, with social media, of course, you have everyone dumping a lot of news on the media, this, and mostly they are conflicting news, etc. And my advice to clients a long time ago, on OPEC meeting day, just go fishing. Don't listen to anyone who is posting anything, because the final say would be completely different from what you are hearing during the day. And during the day, basically, most of the news come through what I call a bathroom break. A bathroom break is a case where, and I'm going to make this hypothetical example, where there is a secret meeting, all the OPEC representatives are inside, and they go through the representatives, everyone is making their case, but they are making the cases, they are not making decisions. They are just making the cases. So the representative of Kazakhstan would say, well, we cannot cut production because we have this deal with PP and we just finished this project and we need to add 20,000 barrels a day, so we cannot cut. Then one of the representatives or someone from his aide basically leaves the room at that moment and go to the bathroom. At the stair steps, a journalist will meet him there and say what they are talking about. And he will say, well, they are talking about increasing production. So his statement is correct because he listened to the Kazakh guy talking about increasing production, but that does not mean OPEC will increase production. That journalist immediately will post that information, but it's completely off, completely wrong. And if you are sitting there with the delegates in the room and you are seeing this guy posting it, you should look at it and say, this guy and his organizations are idiots. And then all of a sudden, the news will start spreading out within 15 minutes. It's all over the news, but it's really a bathroom break. We are right now with the Iran and the United States dialogue or whatever negotiation, whatever you want to call it. We have so many bathroom breaks. Literally. They are not kind of bathroom breaks like the ones in OPEC, but the idea here is we have those too many leaks coming from various, you don't know. So just go fishing. Ignore the noise and go fishing. You want to trade the news, just go ahead and trade it. But there is no more than that. And the prices right now are so sensitive that any negative news about the agreement will bring back prices above 100 easily. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, when we talk about the peace, I am not concerned about whether we are going to have peace or not. I don't think we are going to have ever peace in the region anyway. But this is not the issue. The issue is I spent more than 30 years basically of my life focusing on several areas of research, and one of them is the most difficult and the most interesting and the most intriguing at the same time, which is the unintended consequences of policies and regulations. And experts can learn in advance some of the unintended consequences, and they can share their experiences and thoughts. But we don't know all the unintended consequences. We learn them as we go. But some of them are so clear that 100% they are going to happen. That's why some forecasts basically become really good forecasts because of that. Because you know about the unintended consequences of certain things and you predict what will happen, and they happen. So look at the unintended consequences that we know about right now. What we learned from what happened, regardless of who closed the Hormuz Strait, regardless whether the war is about Iran and its nuclear program or about something larger, regardless of all of that. What we have right now is every person in the world learned that if you want to cause problems to the world or to any country, you go to the Hormuz Strait and do something. And just a couple of young men who's 19 years old with $500 and a drone, they can wreak havoc. Because the world right now is so sensitive to these things. So even if we reach peace, just one piece of news before the market opens, oil prices can shoot up $10 to $15 on a news like that. So if you go back and look at the oil-producing countries historically, let's look at a country like Colombia, for example. Historically, there was problems with the militia within Colombia, and Colombia was living off mostly of oil as a main source of revenues, and the Limon pipeline basically was bombed almost every couple of days. But that is an international phenomenon. In any producing country where you have political problems, the first victim of any dispute are pipelines. They get attacked. Why? Because they are the main source of income of the government. So you want to exact pressure on the government, you do that. And then on oil facilities and pipelines, you get the big bang. This is one of the biggest mistakes, by the way, we've seen in this war. We've seen it before. Why the Houthis were attacking certain facilities in Saudi Arabia. It's just one storage facility, one tank can literally shoot fire and smoke in the air for more than 100 meters or 300 feet. So people who are far away can see that. And terrorists and militias basically love that. They want that big bang. So that's why oil facilities are attacked. And in this war, basically, we got a lot of people on Twitter and other social media basically posting pictures, making conclusions about things they don't know about. An oil refinery or a storage tank basically is gasoline or diesel or oil. It's flammable. It sent the smoke 300 feet in the air. It sent fire 300 feet in the air. That's normal. That's what it is. This is not a destruction of a city. This is not a destruction of a refinery. That is the nature of the industry. That's the nature of the product. So what we have here is a case where everyone learned, if you get mad right now, if you get angry at your government, if you get angry at something, you go to Hormuz. So that's the first one. Now, assume for the Iranian regime, anyone who is getting angry at their government, at this Iranian regime after the peace process, what they are going to do? They are going to go to Hormuz. We've seen it in the last 15 years that every time some segments of the IRGC got mad at some negotiation, they go and they attack ships in the Hormuz Strait. So now the Iranians basically, they know they have something at their hand, whether the government, the IRGC, or anyone who is angry is going to do something. So this is one of the unintended consequences that the Trump administration and the West has to deal with for allowing this to happen. This is really a kind of a never-ending crisis. So before we have the never-ending crisis of the nuclear program, now we have the never-ending Hormuz crisis as a result. So that's one.
Yeah, I wanted to get a deeper take from you on that, because I was thinking about it yesterday, and I've been preparing a video that I'll be releasing tomorrow, probably on this point. But specifically, this whole war the emphasis was about nuclear enrichment, and if you want to believe the headlines so far, then the claim is that the Iranians are willing to give that up. Now, to your point, we don't know how much of this is just noise, but if we run with that principle, right, Anas, one of the things that I think has become very clear is the strategic clarity that the Iranians now have, that the biggest asset they can hold as a deterrent isn't nuclear enriched uranium, but it's the Strait of Hormuz. That's actually their nuclear option. And it's far more potent, it's far more widespread, and far more longer lasting. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think that the Iranians, if anything, this war has given them strategic clarity? Trump's actions have given them greater
Let me be clear about the nuclear program, because this is a very important point. Assume that the Iranians deliver everything Trump wants on a silver platter. Everything. Completely. We are going to see Netanyahu or some new Netanyahu or Netanyahu Jr. or someone else in the world, or some kind of far-right Republican in the United States is going to say down the line, oh, the Iranians lied to us and they had what they have. And the shadow nuclear program is going to stay with us forever. So no matter what, any way you look at it, this is not going to disappear. The shadow of that nuclear program is going to stay with us, and people are going to raise it all the time. That's why it is a never-ending crisis. And one of the ironies that I've written an article 17 years ago and about the Iran nuclear program, and the title of it was Iran Nuclear Program, the Never-Ending Crisis. And it's not going to end, even if they give up everything. Here is the other thing that's kind of funny about this. Assume we have a regime change, and we bring in the friendliest rulers to Iran. Okay? Let's look. The new ruler is going to look around and say, okay, hold on just a second. I have India on my side, nuclear power. I have Pakistan, nuclear power. Russia nearby, nuclear power. And probably the Arabs, whoever you want to call the Arabs there, are working on a bomb, or they are getting it from Pakistan or others. The Israelis have a nuclear weapon. So what I'm going to do? So that's number one. I'm talking about a friendly guy. But this is not the issue. The issue here is this. Look at what happened between Iraq and Kuwait. There was a regime that claimed Kuwait to be part of Iraq and invaded Kuwait. And the regime got changed to change that ideology, to change all of that. We have a completely overhaul of Iraq. Look at the new regime, what they are claiming right now, even in their press and their interviews, and they are claiming exactly what Saddam Hussein said. And again, then you go back in history, Saddam Hussein did not even bring the idea. It was older than Saddam Hussein with a completely different regime. So the idea here is the same thing we've seen with Iraq and Kuwait is going to happen with Iran and the nuclear program. Remember that the United States basically gave the Shah the 5 megawatt nuclear reactor as a gift, which was the nucleus of the Iranian nuclear program. So it was given to Iran for a different regime. So this is a never-ending crisis, no matter what. Any way you look at it, it is a never-ending crisis. And when we talk about Hormuz, There are no substitutes. So those who think about pipelines, who think about canals, who think about divergent, etc., there is no substitute. The only substitute for or solution for Hormuz is politics and diplomacy. Beside that, there is nothing. The pipeline that the Emirates basically is building right now, they are building it because it makes big, massive economic and financial sense. The amount of benefits from this pipeline financially are massive, are huge, regardless of the security issue. Iranians can still hit some targets in the area, the drones, etc. They can use that. But for the pipelines, any pipelines or any diversion should be based on economics and money and finances, not based on security. Because if it's based on security alone, technology has improved, and you covered this so many times on your shows. Security has, or the technology has improved substantially in the last 15 years. Again, a couple of young people with $500 in a drone can literally stall a $1 billion project.
Well, we've seen what happens with the Syrian civil war, with Ukraine, with Azerbaijan and Armenia, and the multiple pipelines across this sort of broader region, and how much it simply can be taken out. Yes. I just want to unpack this a little bit more with you, though, because there's been a lot of rumors again about Iran working with regional players to co-manage, shall we call it, the Strait. So Oman obviously is number one, but then there's the broader Gulf states. Now the Emiratis are the differentiated to that. They're putting most of their eggs in the US basket, if you know what I mean. Like they're betting on the US side, right? Versus the others, which are trying to be a little bit more balanced, I think, or hedging their bets more. So what do you think is the prospect of a tolled strait now? And does it make a difference to you, or it depends how it's set up and which nations co-manage it along with the Iranians?
For the Gulf state, it is like they say in the United States, is catch-22. Catch-22, for example, you will find someone who will say that I would rather a 2-year war, finish the Iranian regime, replace it, rather than to live under American Iron Dome forever. So you will find that way. And you will find the other saying, look, the United States is on the other side of the world. They can leave us at any time, but the Iranians are stuck to us forever. And therefore, we have to deal with it without the intervention of the United States. And those are two powerful opinions. And they are, in any meeting, basically, you will see those opinions where people are struggling to kind of put those together. And at the end, Iranians are not going to go far away, and the Arabs are not going to go far away. And the issue here is you have Israel and you have the United States. And the question is, okay, how you are going to solve this problem? Even if you have an agreement with the regime, I wrote a statement on Twitter and people are asking about it. And I said, innocence is gone. It's over. In a sense, there was always this hope for good relation. There was always this hope for some sort of stability. Now it's gone. It's over. Anyone will be a fool to trust the other side. That's it. So now you are going to base any agreement, and at the same time, while you are literally in a sense, in one hand you are shaking hands, in the other hand you are carrying a dagger behind your back because you don't know what's going to happen next. This is the way the negotiations are going to be. This is not going to be kind of a final agreement. The innocence is gone. The idea that you can trust anyone in the area, it's over.
But how can you guarantee though that the Saudis don't want to work with the Iranians more concertedly to ensure that the strait just operates? You don't think that there's any good?
We've seen this back and forth. We've seen this back and forth over decades, and the United States basically, or the Trump administration and Netanyahu, did not help. I mean, when you have Trump administration talking about destroying a civilization, that was uncalled for statement, because even Iranians who are against the regime, and they've been fighting against the regime and with the Trump administration, they shied away because they said, hold on just a second, this is my civilization, this is my ancestry, this is my culture, and you want to destroy it? So they did not even help kind of remedy the situation. They just kind of put salt on the wound. and made it worse. And this is really one of the biggest mistakes that's been done in this war, is talking about the culture and talking about civilization. That should not. You are talking about a regime and nuclear program. Why you are going for a 5,000-year civilization?
But Anas, aren't you trying to apply sanity or sane washing Donald Trump? The guy does not exactly follow through on what he says, and his claims of a deal have been multiple times expressed, right? He said it back as early as April that a deal was on the way, on the horizon, that talks were going well. So can you seem pretty pessimistic about any prospect of a longer term stability.
Oh, 100%. I mean, even we are changing our outlooks right now for the because we have our outlook to 2050. We are changing it because one of the reasons why we are changing it, because the cost of shipping oil and gas, and when we talk about gas, we are talking about LNG from the Gulf, just went up substantially. And other countries, if you look at their import portfolios, all of them basically are going to resort to diversification. And therefore, the demand for Gulf oil and LNG is going to be hit extremely hard. This idea of having the cheapest oil and cheapest LNG in the world is no longer valid.
No, it isn't. And I think we can see that evident in Saudi Arabia with its Vision 2030, right? MBS is having to cut investments into this Lion City, which was always insane, and some other areas. UAE seems to be a country.
Hold on just a second. I just want to push back against that. These are completely different things. Let's separate those from this, because the issue here is there are plans, there are things that did not work out or work out. That's a different story. But what we are talking about here is completely different. We are talking about the cost of oil, the cost of LNG going through the Hormuz Strait is higher than before, because shippers are not going to send their ships at the rate of a safe place like in other places where they are not going to go to the Gulf. The insurance companies basically are not going to charge the normal rate somewhere else. So this is a completely different story here, that the cost of shipping the oil and LNG through the Hormuz Strait is going to, or already increase, of course, but relative to past years is going to be way higher. And therefore, the competitiveness of petrochemicals, the competitiveness of the NGLs of the Gulf basically is way, way less than before, regardless of everything else.
Okay, interesting. Now, you've mentioned insurance before, and this is something that you've put a lot of emphasis on. So is that still the way you look at it, that insurance and the way that they are going to be calculating it is going to be the most significant fallout from all of this?
Yes. So the idea here is during the war and everything with the closure of Hormuz, basically it is insurance issue and still an insurance issue. But what I'm saying here, I'm going with your argument that we are going to end up with peace and agreement. So the idea here is, even if we end up with peace and agreement, the shipping out of the region is going to be more expensive than the pre-crisis. So more expensive than pre-February as a result of what happened. So this is one of the unintended consequences that's going to last with us for decades, probably forever.
I guess what I'm asking is, though, do you not put too much emphasis on the insurance aspect? Because there's some other people don't consider it quite as much as a core component of
I think it is. Let me put it this way, because I did tweet that, and I would like to emphasize this point. Everyone looked at what they have, and they looked at their weapons, they looked at this and this, and they found out that they need to use economic weapons. And all of a sudden, energy was weaponized. So whether you are talking about LNG, you are talking about natural gas, you are talking about oil, all of that was weaponized with everything it comes with it, which means that if we talk about Bab el-Mandeb, you talk about Panama Canal, you talk about the Hormuz Strait. So it's a whole package that energy was weaponized with everything related to it, including the choke points. At the same time, what part of that package? Insurance. So insurance was weaponized as part of that big package. So the whole thing was weaponized, including insurance. Because I'm going to tell you something about those who work with insurance can confirm that. If, for example, if the Houthis said, I am going to attack all these ships going to the United States and Israel, then from an insurance point of view, every ship that is related to those two countries basically will get higher rate. And others won't because they don't have the same risk. Then someone might come in and say, hold on just a second. Either you raise insurance on everyone or this is discrimination.
Okay, interesting.
And that's a whole different game to play. So that's weaponization.
Well, the US weaponizes everything. And one other thing it weaponizes continuously, which is driving a lot of countries away, is the dollar. Part of this whole idea that I think relates to the strategic clarity point I made earlier is that this is fundamentally going to undermine the petrodollar even more than it already has done, and to the benefit of one other country, which is obviously China. Now, a lot of that depends on their capacity to have an open capital account. If we really want to see the renminbi being a sort of, reserve currency competitor to the dollar, I'm not getting too carried away in terms of the prospect of that, but simply, as you know, the US has the exorbitant privilege, but also exorbitant duty with the global economy. And so I'm just kind of curious how you think, if this peace deal goes well, if we see continued flashpoints, what that means for the United States capacity to hold that status. And
generally speaking, when we talk about the petrodollar, we have to define what we mean by the petrodollar, because it means several things. If it means that selling the oil or pricing oil for $1, oil will continue to be priced in dollar no matter what. If we are talking about the revenues, like Iran and Russia getting the revenues in non-dollar, that's a completely different story. And that can go up and down, but the dollar will remain dominant no matter what. This idea that, the petrodollar is going to collapse is a complete nonsense. I'll tell you several reasons. Of course, I can go for the next 30 minutes talking about why, but I'm going to give you the main reasons. For the Gulf states, their currencies are pegged to the dollar. So they're not going to shoot themselves in the foot. That's number one. Number two, any peace agreement right now with Iran means Iran is going to import from the United States. And the Iranians are so hungry to import anything they can from the United States. Many Americans do not realize that how Iranians love the United States. They think really, they don't hate the United States. And immediately, the moment they start importing from the United States, most of the money that was going to China or going to yuan is going to be dollars. So all of a sudden, the use of dollars is going to increase. If the United States relax sanctions on Russia, it will be the same story. If they relax sanctions on other countries, it will be the same story. So it is a story of sanctions, because only the countries that either suffered from trade wars or sanctions start switching from the dollar. No free country that is just completely free decided to switch. There is not a single example of that. So there were forces, which means that the key is still in the hand of the United States. They can stop the trade wars. They can relax all the sanctions, and all of a sudden, the percentage of use of dollars can go up by at least 10-15%. So it can go back to, let's say, 70% of world traded currencies in the world. So it is a story of sanctions and dominance, not a story of retreat. And that's where the difference is. The other related issue to this, that the United States, for example, by the euro did not happen without the blessing of the United States. I mean, let's be frank about it. The IMF did not accept the yuan as one of the currencies in its basket of 6 currencies without the blessing of the United States. So the drawing rights, basically, they added the yuan to it with the blessing of the United States because it served the interests of the United States. So we got to be kind of careful with the petrodollar, because it is still dominant. I'm going to give you other examples, by the way. The United States has many levers that can use. And one of the levers that many people do not know about is this. Every single dollar that Iraq generates from revenues, it goes through New York first, and then it will be transferred to Iraq. Iraq does not receive a single penny from its revenues. So the United States still have many levers.
But what about outside of the financial angle, the geoeconomics more broadly? How much do you think that China can leverage this to its advantage? How much can China be the silent power broker, the key stakeholder in all of this? Even if they don't want their fingerprints, to quote another guest I had on a couple of days ago, even if they don't want their fingerprints on the final peace deal, they're still being critical and encouraged with helping the Pakistanis approach strategies, engaging both sides, the Qataris joining the fray. They're very much behind the scenes in this, and you don't think that's going to make a difference to the economic outlook?
I'm going to look at it from the energy side, since this is my field, and I'm going to look at it from that angle. China is still playing defensive until today. Everything they are doing basically is defensive. It's about, in a sense, if you want to talk about it in financial market terms, they are adopting the policy of preserving capital, not growing capital. Okay, so they are very defensive, and they are protecting themselves, and that basically means that their role remains limited in the world relative to everything else. Now, what's going to happen in the future, I don't know, because you need strategists to talk about that who are specialists in China. But from pure energy, which is, of course, essential to national security and everything else, if you look at them, they are playing defense, and it's not offense at all.
Okay, interesting. No, I guess that's a fair point. I know you're not a Sino-centric expert, but I think it's worth getting that broader energy perspective as well, the thematic side. So I've also just seen on some updates here that the Americans and Iranians have tentatively agreed a deal on Iranians' frozen assets, which more likely mean a full deal is established tomorrow, or the announcement of a full deal tomorrow. I'm kind of curious, how much do you think that the frozen assets sanctions relief play into the energy aspect in all of this?
It plays a big time. By the way, the Iranians have already $6 billion that be released and then being held in Qatari banks, so they were not able to get it from a previous deal. I think they are talking about 20 billion right now, and could be significantly more. Now, notice the following, and this is one of the ironies about politics, that whatever Republicans been accusing Obama of, now Democrats will use exactly the same language, the same rhetoric, the same thing against Trump once he had hand the Iranians the money. And the same lies and the same thing about Obama will be repeated now against Trump, because many people do not know that these are frozen assets. They think this is an American taxpayer money being given to Iran, which is not. This is an Iranian money that's being frozen, and they are getting it. So what we've seen before, when they got the money from the Obama administration, they immediately dedicated some of that to oil investment so they can expand capacity, and they expand production so they can make more money. So we've seen that. Now we are going to see basically the same behavior, and probably some of it will go to repair some of the energy infrastructure that's been damaged during this war. At the same time, they will start building their customer base exactly like we've seen before, because their customer base right now is limited mostly to China. Now they are going to expand it, and historically they were able to increase it to about 24. So they'll start expanding that. And it will be one of the ironies if we see the United States importing Iranian oil the same way they did with Venezuela.
It would be right, yes, absolutely. So, and that's, I guess my penultimate question is simply, what would you say to those on the inside? If you could be in the inside of these talks, what would you be telling people to think, to to do? What would your advisement be, given the severity and just continued ambiguity around the status of the Strait of Hormuz? It's not going to go
Well,
back to what it was.
I would bring experts to start talking about the unintended consequences of both a deal and no deal, and start thinking about that, because reaching a deal and and stopping the war is the easy part. But once you get to the unintended consequences, you don't know what's going to happen, and this is really a serious problem. It's a main concern to me that we've seen this before, where unintended consequences, basically the cost of them was extremely high.
I think a lot of people think about the unintended consequences of this war.
And of course, I mean, if we end up with a deal, there, of course, what you are going to do with the Iranian diaspora and all the Shah Sun supporters and all those guys, what you are going to do with them, how you are going to respond to them, because they have them live in their own bubble, and now that bubble burst in a way where people will turn against Republicans, will turn against the Trump administration, because they had them live in that bubble, and now that bubble is burst.
But why do you need to do anything at all with them?
Because Trump, basically, they received the guy at the White House and they propped him up and done all of that. So it's kind of, okay, I mean, were you playing with him, or what the deal is? So there are many questions on that.
I mean, the Iranian diaspora is pretty broad, and a lot of them are very pro, I don't know, return to the Shah in those years. But I think there's also a pragmatic group of them. So I think it's difficult to tell how they would react to the US in terms of voting patterns. I mean, it's pretty clear, I think, regardless, that the midterms are going to be shambolic for the Trump administration, and clearly why they want to get out of this. But I mean, it seems to me Trump wants to try to change the conditions or win something back. And for me, it's the Democrats to lose more than it is the Republicans to win the midterms, because the Democrats have this habit of never being properly prepared to do something in the right place at the right time. Their best missed opportunity is to miss the opportunity, if you know what I mean. But I guess the last question, really, Anis, for you is simply, what happens if we don't see a deal? There's a lot of concern around Netanyahu and his actions over Lebanon. Could that be a real disruptor in the long-term prospect of sort of seeing this thing wind down, or at least stabilize?
I don't know, but the idea of third parties or some elements of the IRGC not happy with the agreement who cause problems. We have precedents, and we have many examples in the past where third parties basically ruin those agreements. So what if something like this happened? It would fit with the history that we know about. Again, I would like to go to the point of Hormuz Strait. I am afraid that one of the unintended consequences of that, we opened a can of worms and the genie is out of the bottle and no way back, which means that the Hormuz Strait problems are in forever, and it will be repeated often, and they will impact the market unless people, until we find, in a sense, companies will have workaround, etc., to work around this. Let me just add one point here, because this is an important point about the corruption in the region. There are many ships that passed Hormuz Strait, and you heard that the Iranians were charging $2 million. Well, the briberies to some Iraqi officials and Iranian officials were above 10 million. So we are not talking here about the official government to government agreements or anything else. No, these are kind of like almost gangs on the side organizing the Hormuz transportation, or the Hormuz passage. The Iranian government or the IRGC did not even know about it, and the Iraqi government did not know about it. It's bad elements on this side, bad element on this side. Some crooks who own ships basically work with them, and they were able to get those ships out. Neither government got the money. So there is a lot of corruption there. Therefore, the idea of a third party derailing the negotiations or causing problems, is really, we should keep that in mind all the time.
Those numbers are astounding to me, and the fact that they don't even go anywhere near the decision makers or stakeholders and us is even more bizarre. But just to pick up on what you said during that, which is sort of what I want to end on, but is this, so we're in a new normal now? We're in a permanent new normal where oil prices can be volatile even more than they have been in I don't know, the peak of COVID or the war in Ukraine. And the Strait of Hormuz is just another flashpoint that can be administered as and when based on whoever, because of the way it's so.
Since we are ending this, I would like to say the following statement. First of all, this is the biggest event in our lives. This is the biggest event since World War II. This is not an oil crisis. This is not an energy crisis. This is way, way bigger than that. And this is going to shape the economics and the finances of the world. We already have, until last Friday, we have 57 countries asking the IMF and financial institutions for help, asking the IMF and financial institutions for loans. 57. This is unprecedented. Some of them are rich countries. They don't have cash. So this is really a big, massive event that is changing the world. And again, we might end up with unintended consequences that are going to slap us on our face, and we don't know how to deal with that. The other issue is the biggest problem we have right now is that people of the Middle East lost faith in any good coming out of the Iranians, and lost faith of any good coming out of the Trump administration. And the reason why, because the Trump administration did not protect them from the rockets of the Iranians basically falling on them. And they were wondering why. We've done everything possible. We've done this, we've done this, we've done this, we give you this, etc. And then when we get hit with rockets, there was nothing there. So that one. Notice that one of the best agreements ever made since during the Iranian crisis saved the world. And the United States did not want it, which is the Saudi Houthi agreement. It stood the test of time, and we are getting the Saudi oil, more than 4 million barrels a day, to Asia and saving the world economy because of that agreement that the United States does not want. So in a sense, they are way out. It's just this intervention by others basically is part of the problem.
Anis, I know I keep saying last question, but you didn't say something that I want to sort of pick up on, which is simply, but okay, so this is the worst crisis, global crisis since the Second World War. How does, since this is a more macroeconomic orientated podcast conversation, how as an investor, as someone who watches the markets, not just from a morality standpoint, but what do we do with that information? How do I navigate this global situation?
Well, for day traders, basically, they can play the news, and I don't know how to play the news. So I'm not the guy who can advise traders on this to play the news. But for investors, basically, it is very clear where we are going. Everything we've been talking about in the past, basically, is flipped upside down. A couple of things stayed the same, but they are better, like LNG. I'll put a lot of money into LNG. And I'm talking here about the whole supply chain. I'm not talking about only the companies that export. I'm talking about the companies that build the facilities. I'm talking about shippers who ship the LNG. I'm talking about companies that own the regasification ships, etc. So it's the whole supply chain. So LNG basically is a big winner out of this, any way you look at it. LNG was the winner anyway from the AI and the data centers. But now LNG is a bigger winner. People were downplaying coal. Now coal basically is on the upside. I posted today 4 companies. The gains in their stocks for the last few months is like 40% and 30%. But that's going to continue, because now when you link things to national security, people are going to say, look, I'm not going to get rid of the coal, because if I have another Hormuz, coal is going to save me. So coal is not going to go down the same way that being predicted before the crisis. And then when it comes to solar, wind, EVs, hybrid, and storage batteries, all of a sudden they are going to have an additional value that did not exist before. And that additional value comes from national security, that these things can save you now, regardless of the subsidies, regardless of the additional cost, regardless that some of them being idle most of the year. Because one thing you don't want is to be caught in a case like Hormuz, and where prices go up from $60 to $175 for oil. Literally, that's what happened. From $60 to $175. Russian oil was sold at $40, jumped to $120. Okay? And that if you can get it. We've seen ships basically literally reaching the Indian ports and then leaving again and going to China.
Mm.
So that's if you can get it. So even if you are willing to pay, someone is going to outbid you in this case. So the main result out of Hormuz Strait is that everyone is going to follow the Chinese model. And putting it in a different way, the same way I wrote it, was Trump just globalized the Chinese model. And the Chinese model is linking natural resources to national security. And within that natural resources, we have energy sources, linking them to national security. Once you link them to national security, you cannot argue against subsidies. You cannot go to Congress basically trying to ask for a budget, and the Congress will tell you, well, you know, this subsidy is too high. But we'll tell them, look, this is my future, this is my country, this is my nation. We are going to go under, etc. So what's going to happen is within that system, the new system, the globalization of the Chinese system, we are going to see Europeans who couldn't pass certain budgets for renewables and battery storage. They are going to stop talking about climate change, and they will pass that under national security, which means that the climate change policies that failed will be passed again, but without the expression of climate change. Is going to be under national security, and it's going to pass. We've seen in the United States the Congress opposing several laws, and September 11th hit, and all of a sudden they adopted all of them. So all it takes just one event to change the mind of the people's representatives. So this globalization of the Chinese system means countries are going to go inward. They are going to focus on their own national resources, and what best than solar and wind. And coming from Anas Alhajji to talk about solar and wind, people will laugh. But that's really what happens. That's what the impact of Hormuz is. And therefore, you ask me about investment. What we are going to see major investment being made that live off government subsidies under national security. And therefore, all of a sudden, this battery storage basically business becomes a very profitable business because you can extract cash flow from the government for years to come.
Well, you got me a lot to think about, Anis, that's for sure. I also would say nuclear, focusing on nuclear energy. I mean, we're seeing these discussions in the UK. Just as one small example, the UK has often been seen as a climate leader. It likes to put its emphasis on climate change and climate policies, decarbonisation, all that. And we're seeing a huge shift away from that narrative amongst the private sector as well. So yeah, definitely a greater emphasis on renewables, nuclear, but also, as you say, the securitization, I think, of economics and geoeconomics as a broad perspective. But Anis, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today. Everyone who's been watching us on X, do check out Anis's Substack. We're also streaming on Substack, so do go over there and subscribe to us both, because I would look forward to having you back to do more about this in the next few days, next few weeks. You know, there's plenty more to talk about, but we'll leave it there for tonight, everyone. Thanks so much for watching, and thank you, Anis, again for joining us.